Thanks for listening to the Nice Podcast. I am available to deliver keynote presentations and workshops for your company or for your conference. Reach out to me, davedelaney.speaks.com, or email me and we can talk. Now on with the show.
Hey, it's Jason with the Marketing Podcast Network. You have less than 1 month left to get special early bird pricing for the Creator Economy Expo 2023. This event, folks, is for content creators and entrepreneurs interested in building and growing their content-first businesses. Do not miss this show. Join over 500 bloggers, podcasters, authors, newsletter writers, speakers, consultants, and freelancers at the learning and networking event for content creators. Plan to attend May 1st through the 3rd in Cleveland, Ohio. Register now to secure early bird pricing before it disappears March 31st. Early bird pricing ends March 31st. As a special offer, you can get $100 off just for listening to MPN shows like this one. Go to cex.events to register. Use the coupon code MPN100. The address, the URL, cex.events. That's the whole thing. Type that into your browser. cex.events. The code you use, MPN100. The Creator Economy Expo, Cleveland, May 1st through the 3rd. See you there.
I think the entrepreneurial spirit is like, once you create something, I don't think the creative or launching process ever stops. It's just, it iterates from I'm building and launching a business to now like, hey, let's refine this part of the business or this function or this department, and then boom, do it, and then delegate it and go to the next thing, right? And what's the next venture? So it's kind of internal now, but the business itself is definitely bigger than what I ever imagined and bigger myself, which I'm very prideful of.
Nice.
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 Nice. Nice.
Nice.
Nice.
Nice with Dave Delaney.
Welcome to the Nice Podcast, all about communication, collaboration, and becoming better leaders. I'm your host, Dave Delaney from Futureforth.com, where we help fast-growing tech companies retain talent, improve culture, so you have happier, more connected teams. Today, I'm speaking with Brad Ebenhoeh, CEO and partner of Accountfully, a modern outsourced accounting solution. Brad, thank you so much for joining me today.
Looking forward to it, Dave. I always love chatting about business and communication and everything you're going to chat about. It's on the forefront of employees' minds these days and team members' minds. So
Definitely. I'm going to get right into that. I have one quick question I always start with, which is, what's the nicest thing someone has done for you recently?
Wow. It probably wouldn't be my kids telling me that I got gray hair. That's probably not a good thing. But I would say that it is probably my wife, who's my business partner, just kind of providing some coverage for me over this weekend to kind of get some past due tasks off my plate that were seriously stressing me out. So because of that, I'm going into the work week here feeling really good.
Excellent. So yeah, Meredith is your COO and partner in the business. Tell me a little bit about how you guys met. You met in Chicago, right?
Yeah. So I'm from Michigan. She's from Nashville, Tennessee, and we both went to college for accounting and ended up at one of the big accounting firms, big corporate firms, PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, and worked in Chicago. And then we met working on a client account there, and so we started working together, and then started hanging out and dating, and did all that in Chicago in our kind of mid to early 20s and loved life and enjoyed it. But over time, the corporate accounting world kind of was too much for both of us, and just the overhead of corporate world and traveling and getting on airplanes and, just kind of got burnt out. And that was probably 2008, 2009 timeframe. It's kind of when we all met and did all that in Chicago. It was great times, but it was time to move on after that.
And so you moved from there to North Carolina first, right? And then South Carolina. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So we moved down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and I became kind of a controller, accountant for a family of wine businesses in Charlotte. And I'm from the Midwest, Michigan, and kind of Chicago, and always wanted to move south for the weather. And so we both moved down there, and I got my first experience with small business and understanding how to manage inventory and cash flow issues of small businesses and all that stuff. Because when you're working in the in the corporate world, you don't ever have any visibility to any of that. So,
Yeah.
We moved down to Charlotte, and then we were in Charlotte for about a year, and didn't really vibe with the Charlotte at the time, which was about 10 years ago. I know it's dramatically changed now, but we ended up driving down to Charleston and Savannah for a long weekend, and ended up loving Charleston, South Carolina, and fell in love with it. We moved here about 3 months later, and that's been our home for 11 years.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, and it's a beautiful, beautiful area for sure. What part of Michigan are you from?
Mid-Michigan, like Flint area, basically. Flint, and then I went to Michigan State. So middle of Michigan, and then after college at Michigan State, I lived outside of Detroit for a couple of years. So, and my family, my parents, my brother, a lot of my cousins, grandparents are still basically back in my hometown, still there. And I take me and the family back up there in the summertime every year, because that's when you should be in Michigan, in the summertime.
It's funny, actually. So my wife's uncle is from that neck of the woods, and I'm from Toronto originally and have lived in Nashville for about 15 years. And so for whatever reason, as a good Canadian lad in Ontario, you would just go south. If you're going to go somewhere into the States, typically you would go south to somewhere warmer, preferably. So I've never really explored Michigan much. And a couple summers ago, he invited us they had a place, Lake Charlevoix, something like that. Charlevoix. And I was like, holy crap, it's gorgeous. It's really a pretty area. It's beautiful.
Yeah, northern Michigan in the summertime is awesome with the lakes and everything.
Yeah.
We I frequented Windsor and all the things when I was 19, 20 and in college. 'Cause you can
let me think about that for a second. Yeah, right.
So we took a lot of road trips from East Lansing down to Canada. Times.
Yeah, I've got friends with a couple friends with bars in Windsor, and they actually spend a lot of time in Detroit as well. Detroit's such a cool city as well. So interesting. And Michael Moore fans. I mean, come on, Flint.
Not really?
No,
Flint is. Yeah,
Flint is.
I mean, my dad worked at GM for 30 years in General Motors and retired years ago. So. We went all through it, my family, but where I'm from is a really small town, about 20 minutes outside of that. So you either, work at GM or you work at, or a farmer. So, all the last 20 years, 25 years of unions and all the impact economically of GM has really, changed my, hometown and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting. So, and you moved south. So, and your wife, you said Meredith, is from Nashville. Is that right?
That is right. Yep. She's got her parents live there in Franklin, and her sister and live in 12 South. So, and then we have an office there in Nashville. So, Nashville's awesome. We were there 2 weeks ago when it snowed. So that was awesome.
Yeah, can't escape you. I know.
Uh-huh.
We always joke, we live in kind of a cul-de-sac neighborhood on the top of a hill. And I always joke that, when we have a ton of snow or not a ton, but when we have enough snow on the ground and my family and I get out and get the sleds out and start sledding down the hill, that our neighbors are like, see the Canadians in their natural habitat as we slide past their homes.
Hilarious. Yeah. Our 4.5-year-old twins, that was the first time actually playing in snow and sledding. So it was awesome.
So you started Accountfully in January of 2012 with Meredith as your COO and partner. What made you decide to start a business together?
Well, because we have a similar skill set. I mean, we, as we were, I was more focused on it originally, the business and consulting business. I mean, she was kind of doing some health coaching and some other aspects, but she was engaged as well. But as we were kind of trying to figure out hey, we're going to do this entrepreneurial thing and we're going to do this cool topic and consulting and all this type of stuff, right? You're trying to figure out really what you're trying to sell. And then all of a sudden something sticks with some customers or clients, and then you start growing, right? And you need, you need more time and energy to do the work. And then after we kind of caught on a couple of items, we saw there was a possibility of this company growing to an aspect, it was like, all right, Meredith, here's the deal. We're young. We're about to get married. We're about to buy our first house. There's two options here now. Like, I'm expanding too much with where I can do all the work. You're doing a little bit. Can you allocate more time? Because either that or I need to hire somebody. So it makes sense to keep the money in the household while we're growing a small business and, and not making a ton of money in those first kind of hustle years, as most entrepreneurs know. And so it kind of was a right of, let's do this. And then it just started taking off. And with us, with our similar mindset and skill set and background, it just made sense for us to kind of roll together in it. And then there's definitely ups and downs of working together and everything. But after a while, I mean, we kind of got a good workflow, and that's been 11 years. So, but yeah, I think it was kind of more out of like a necessity of, hey, this aspect or this service is growing, and we both are accountants. Let's just do it together, and this is our life,
And you have offices, as you said. Obviously, your HQ is in Charleston, and then you opened an office in Nashville. How has the pandemic been affecting things as far as a brick and mortar, as far as having an office and having staff traditionally at that office? What's that been like for you?
Yeah, it's been interesting. So first off, like, our client service delivery did not change at all. We basically provide outsourced accounting services to small businesses across the nation, and we've always used cloud-based tools, even like QuickBooks Online, Bill.com. And we've done that since we started providing the service like a decade ago, as soon as those platforms came out. So that wasn't a change. What was a change, clearly, was the work environment where, people had to either be in Charleston or Nashville, and you had to be at the office every day. And, we'd allow work from home 2 to 3 days a month, right, upon approval. And then kind of quarantine hit and all that stuff went crazy. And so basically for definitely kind of a month and a half, 2 months, everybody was working from home. And then after that, living in South Carolina and Tennessee, it's a little bit different than some of the other states that have more restrictions. We basically opened up the offices and just said, you guys can come whenever you want. If you want to come to work, great. If you want to stay at home, great. No big deal. And so we did that for a year. And, people would keep, a handful of people would come back to work, or maybe 2 or 3 days a week and things like that at the office. But, there was a decent chunk that stayed at home and work, which was fine. So after a while, we basically required, and this is kind of our policy now, is if you're in the Charleston and Nashville market, you basically need to work from the office Tuesday through Thursday. And then we can work from home Mondays and Fridays. And if something comes up Tuesday through Thursday, or similar situation it's not like we're going to say no. It's just kind of needs prior approval. And the reason we did that is just so we can get kind of our work culture back and learning and training. We're a fast growing company, and it's really hard to learn and engage and create that relationship with new employees or new team members, virtually. Virtual work is fantastic. I love it. I love working from home Mondays and Fridays. I'm at my house right now. But being at the office and just face-to-face conversations, it just works better from our perspective, right? So that's number one. It's changing that aspect. And then number two, because we're growing so fast, we basically, I think we grew probably 15 people last year net. I think ended up about 53, 54-ish. Finding talent is crazy right now. It's nuts. So people that live in Charleston and Nashville now can have jobs anywhere across the nation because everybody's basically allowing remote work. But it's similar, right? Now you can actually get awesome talent in Charleston, South Carolina without people moving here or in Nashville. So basically, we've essentially gone where we're hiring full remote people as well now. So essentially, our talent recruitment is full remote, or as well as in Nashville, in the Nashville market, as well as in the Charleston market. And we're basically hiring in all three locations, remote and, quotations. So basically, I think we have about 35, let's say, in Charleston, 10 in Nashville, 10 full remote workers. And I think that's going to be the case long term. Just keep looking at all markets. And
I know it's early days in this sort of new model of working from home, remote working, at least it is for most companies, really. Are you concerned with the long-term effect of culture as it certainly applies to those who are working remotely, like all the time, like those 10 that are not, I mean, it's not possible for them to come in each day or the Tuesday through Thursday?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge concern because just because your first month or two in a new job can like make or break you, right? So you have to be very careful of onboarding and super touch and making sure that they're plugged in, right? So before we kind of went to that model, I guess there's a couple things we do. Number one is like, no matter where you're at, like week one of working at Accountfully, you come to the Charleston office. We have kind of start dates, right? Where you have like last Tuesday, we had 4 people start, two in the Charleston market, one from Arizona, one from Louisiana, right? And they all started the same day, went through the same onboarding plan. So it's just like a good culture starter. You get to come to Charleston, hang out with the team. We have a happy hour and all that stuff, right?
That's good. Yeah.
Which I think really helps. And then number two, so you get it. And then number two is we've kind of recreated or relaunched an employee onboarding kind of development training module, right? Where it wasn't as streamlined and tied down 4 months ago as it is now. So basically we have like a senior manager on our team that leads it. We've kind of updated kind of the first kind of week or two of their engagement or of their employment here. Mm-hmm. Kind of really had focused conversations and focused trainings on what they really need to know. For what we do, as well as have different team members involved in the process. So I think by those two aspects, they get much more face-to-face than they typically would. And then after that, they're kind of getting specific training and then meeting other personnel like, hey, this training in day 5 or day 6 is led by our accounting manager in the Boston market, things like that. So they get more face-to-face interaction. And then I think that helps them with that. With that being said, the last job position we went full remote was pure staff accountant. So we had senior accountants, managers, etc. Like where we're like, we can go remote. We can find, mature people and people that have good experience that can do this, and we know they'll get the work done. But we've always been, conscious about the staff accountant, i.e. the folks that are out of college a couple of years and not as experienced, not as mature from a professional standpoint, because we've all been there. Yeah. And so we're like, it'd be better for them to be in our markets, but guess what? Like, again, the labor market's saying what it is, and we're growing, so we need to hire people. So now we're at that aspect, and, so we're just going to kind of try to make sure there's proper controls and oversight, as well over them, just to kind of make sure people are getting their job done, they're learning, they're getting their trainings done, they're communicating properly, they're doing our internal systems as well. So all TBD, and I'm sure there'll be things that we mess up, and I'm sure there'll be things that we improve upon, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. And yeah, I think onboarding is such an important part that so often gets missed just because, I think the average duration of a new employee is like 45 days before they quit if the onboarding process isn't where it needs to be. And so the fact that you're focusing on that and pivoting it, as you need to, again, given sort of where we are now, and that helps a lot. Now, I read a little bit about how you also spend time coaching employees. Do you want to share a little bit about that process, what that's like?
Yeah, I think, again, it's now that we're so many people, we've really decentralized our approach, right? Because it's just so hard to know everybody now. But, in the past, we definitely had, director level people or partners like myself and my wife, Meredith, and accounting director, Chris, be more hands-on with our team members, right? So everybody gets a direct manager or a direct report manager, as well as like a new hire buddy. The new hire buddy's more at their staff level, but for those that are at the manager level, coaching them on their processes, their workflow, their education, their reviewing their deliverables, their financials, coaching them in terms of how they coach others, right, or train others depending upon their position. So it's definitely much a hands-on approach at Accountfully as much as it can be.
And as far as the new hire buddy goes, you mentioned partnering them with someone else on their team. Are there other characteristics you're looking for in budding up a new hire with someone else. I love that idea, and it's clever.
Yeah, it's I think it's like definitely physical, right? Location. If you're in Charleston, be good to have a Charleston, Nashville, so you can can I get that face to face, go out for coffee or whatever. But outside of that, if there's any specific experiences that they can relate with, it'd be good, right? Like, hey, if they're a tax person, maybe a tax person. If they're inventory specialty, do that. Those types of things. There's a little nuance in terms of us kind of understanding from the interview process, this person could vibe really well with this team member from a personality standpoint. But outside of that, sometimes it just comes down to who's available and who doesn't have a buddy or whatever for that aspect, and who do we think will be a good job. And that person's just that informal work relationship that you can ask the dumb questions or the embarrassing things of versus going to your boss or the manager that you may have a little bit more of a like apprehension to go to. So it's a good little kind of friend, buddy, somebody that, has been through this the last 6, 9, 12 months of, oh yeah, I had that same problem, or I had that same question, or, hey, this is the one thing that I didn't know when I onboarded that, you should know. So it's kind of in that realm.
Yeah, no, and I love that idea. I think it's a great one. And I like the fact that you're able to hire folks, both in both markets and then elsewhere as well. Do you guys ever all come together like for a retreat or anything like that? Or we did last. We actually, it's hilarious when we were probably 10 people and we just launched the Nashville market like 5-6 years ago. We actually flew everybody from Charleston to Nashville, and we rented an Airbnb Nice.
12 South, and it was fantastic. Went out on Broadway and had a great time. And that was actually right in early February. So it was after January and after 1099 year-end stuffs, but that was great. So that was like the first official time. And then after that, we did one 3-4 years ago, and then we were going to do it annually. Then COVID hit, and I kind of put a pause on it for a year. But this past year, we did I think September, October, we actually did a retreat here in Charleston where everybody came from across the nation, Nashville, everywhere, where we had a cool little breakout kind of, team event, some stuff that we had at the office, or, some kind of informal work meetings and things like that. And then a time for us all a volunteer time frame is a volunteer event, and then a time to go out on the town in Charleston and have a good time, like a big party to meet and greet everybody. So we did that. It was awesome. We're definitely looking forward to doing that again kind of every year, which we'll probably do like I said, late Q3, early Q4, and try to get everybody here and from an annual perspective.
Yeah, I think the retreats are seem to do really well just because you are bringing people together. When I do workshops or speak at retreats, I find that that's always such a good thing also because it brings people, as you said, when they're based elsewhere, it brings them together so they can also experience the same thing in person, which is also, I think, really impactful. It's kind of like a conference in a way because, or a good conference, I should say, because you go to a good conference and you make friends for life, and you all share, similar experiences. Also a reason why I love like a single track conference, because everybody in the audience experiences the same speaker. And so they have that point to talk about over lunch, that kind of thing. I watched your Disrupt talk, by the way, which I thought was great, about building something bigger than yourself. I thought that was such a good takeaway. And I know that's from a few years ago. Is that something you still stand by? Is that something you still, kind of a thought that you still share with folks?
Yeah. Like it's interesting because, and actually last Thursday was our official, legal 10-year anniversary or birthday of Accountfully. Which literally we had our quarterly town hall that afternoon, and I was kind of our marketing person put a 10-year timeline, just was, a slide, some random pictures, and literally I started talking about it and started choking up because I was like, oh my God, look at what we built,
Yeah.
And it was kind of just a crazy experience because I literally remember the first kind of one of my first memories of being in flashbacks, like launching Accountfully. I remember like as basically like a bookkeeping or accounting consultant, like, the software that you typically use is QuickBooks for small businesses, right?
Sure.
And I read this book, short QuickBooks consulting book back in 2012, let's say. And it was always, and it says it was like, the key is building a business where literally it's like not Brad Ebenhoeh Consulting. It's actually a brand name, and people just don't come to this company and say, hey, Brad, help me. And I always kind of remember that, and I was like, God, I don't think I'll ever be able to do that. Like, I don't think we will. It's always going to be Brad and Meredith, who's my wife and business partner. Brad and Meredith.
Right.
And then literally just like, a couple years later, next thing you know, it's like 10 of us, and it's Accountfully. And it's, people would ask me a question. I'd be like, I have no idea who you are. Like, I'm Michael's client. I'm like, you got to talk to Michael. And it was just like one of those, epiphanies of like, wow, this is definitely bigger than what I expected. And even the venture we're at now, we're at like 55 people, and, and 5 people start each month, or 6 people. And, and I've only not met them all, so it's just like it's this craziness of that. But it goes back to that. I think the entrepreneurial spirit is like, once you create something, I don't think the creative or launching process ever stops. It's just, it iterates from I'm building and launching a business to now like, hey, let's refine this part of the business or this function or this department, and then boom, do it, and then delegate it and go to the next thing, right? And what's the next venture? So it's kind of internal now, but the business itself is definitely bigger than what I ever imagined, and bigger myself, which I'm very prideful of.
Where are you as far as, focusing? Obviously, you're focusing on the numbers, I would expect. Mm-hmm. I believe that would be in your DNA. So where is it when you're not hitting those numbers? Like, how do you deal with that? I mean, I find setting goals and making sure that you're keeping focused and making sure those goals are, quote unquote, smart acronym goals where you're measuring what's happening. So how do you handle not always seeing the numbers exactly where you want them to be?
Yeah, I feel as if the way that we run our business is definitely very like black and white and measurable, as we're accountants, as you just basically stated.
Yeah.
And I feel like my wife and I, who essentially ran every aspect of the business, and where I'm the CEO now, kind of manage sales and marketing and oversee kind of several departments, whereas she's the COO, does the operations, client, economics, profitability, yada yada yada, right? So we have kind of separate functions and departments that basically I have 100% confidence she's gonna do her job. She's 100% confidence I'm gonna do my job and hit our marks within our specific functions. And with that being said, we do basically in terms of where we're at, because we're in a really good growth pattern and we're growing very organically, and it's good. The problem comes in is like, I feel like every time we don't hit a metric, it's because it's some sort of new department or function that I don't think that we properly created or measured or understand how to succeed in that department. And I think that's where like, when that happens, I get stressed out and highly stressed, because I don't have, it's really hard for me to not have control over something. And by that, I mean, not because I want to babysit or micromanage, but if I can't have control over, let's say, hey, we need to hire 6 people this month and we only hire 3, I'm like, well, what can we do more? How can I help you? What is it? Like, what are the solutions to get us to the next level?
Yeah.
Similar, like on our tax department, if somebody else is running it or managing it, a tax person. But then I'm like, well, why have we not hit the number of tax returns we should hit this month? Well, it's this, and that. And I feel like, I don't think I've gotten my hands around the process or the metrics or the systems or the workflow yet, right? So it's kind of like, all right, I'm going to jump over here. Let's figure out how it's going. Let's make sure we have a good process and workflow and systems and the data that talks to each other and that we're very efficient. And then what are the metrics we're going to hit? So I think for me, it's much more of like, if I'm not hitting it, it's really focusing, understanding what's going on, why we're not hitting it, and then implementing better systems proactively up front. But then also like, what are the key metrics we need to be reviewing, and how often do we need to be reviewing it, so then we don't fall off the rails?
Yeah, it makes sense. What about unplugging and I imagine, not to pry into your personal lives, I only ask some of this too because my wife is not my business partner. However, we have perhaps aspirations for that one day, but there is a possibility she could kill me. So based on that, how do you guys handle? And we have two kids. Now our kids are 15 and 16. So they're at the age now where, they really don't care if we're here or not. But how do you spend some time unplugging? Are you able to unplug, from the business? I mean, to enjoy some downtime or to relax
I think we set up our business pretty good where we can kind of, work the typical like full-time week, but still get away. Right.
Yeah.
I typically work full-time. I work, 40, 45 hours a week, basically. Right. Mm-hmm. My wife she works 25 to 30 hours a week, and then she's pregnant. So we're having another baby here next month.
Congrats.
Thank you. But because of our kind of schedules, and we've always kind of focused on making sure like we're not working on the weekends, and we're, our current kids are 4.5-year-old twins, and making sure we're in the morning engaging with them, in the evening engaging with them, and, all that stuff, and being present. So, with our kids, it's really been, I think, easier to unplug, to be honest with you, because it's forced unplug, where before we had kids, I would say we probably worked our ass off a lot more, and on weekends and stuff, but you have a lot more time. And on top of that, that was like, year 4 and 5 of the business that we're trying to grow, right? So, but now, no, we have like dedicated kind of every Friday we go out and connect, with dinner, and our nanny kind of watches our children, and then we try to take a couple trips a year. But there's times like I don't even want to think about work on the weekends or on vacations. So, we try to do as good as we can and respect each other's boundaries. But at times, like I'll say something business related, and she's annoyed. Sometimes she'll say something business related, and I'm annoyed because I'm sitting by the pool, or we're on a beach walk, and like I don't really care about team member 1 or client 2, and it's like, but it is what it is, and it's a lifestyle. It's just we've gotten used to it, and I think we've segmented it as good as we can. And that's your departmental focus, that's mine, and then at that point, we didn't create this business to work 60, 70 hours, and I'd rather hire great talent and people to kind of help us facilitate and grow it, and that's what we've done, and that's what we're going to keep trying to do.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I love the fact that you're both on the same page that way, and that you're able to unplug and enjoy the work that you're doing as well, and the benefits from that. And and so 4.5-year-old twins, and then your next kiddo coming soon. So that's wild. What's that been like as far as like balancing being a parent as well as growing a business?
It's been crazy. The first thing it did, though, was like when we had our first kids, like 4.5, 5 years ago, like it made us again start to delegate more and hire more, right? Of like I need to hire somebody to do this job. So it actually was the first time my wife had kids, and she went on maternity leave for 3 months, and I took a couple weeks off. We were like, all right, let's get the team members in here so they can take care of the business while we're gone, and we did. Yeah. And similarly now with our next kid, it's, what, my wife does this and this operations, she's not gonna be here 3 months. All right, we need to hire a full-time operations person. So we need to do this, we need to do that, and how do we set ourselves up for success? So then when we come back into the business, or like when she does specifically, because she'll be gone for 3 months, it's kind of a new phase for her and more strategic every time, right? Because now we've delegated and got that out of the way. So it's actually forced us to, I think, play our hand more and to be more strategic and more proactive in hiring people and having kind of deadline dates that this needs to be done by this date and delegated, which is great for that aspect. And then, at the same time we've had kids, we keep growing, and there's different phases and strategic aspects of the business that that need our attention, that we again just have to kind of reset our focus on and go from there.
As far as growing Accountfully to 50 plus people, how are you able to keep them all sort of in communication with one another a lot of the time? Like, are you using like a Slack or some sort of technology to help folks? I know you started sort of with a cloud-based kind of business anyway, but what sort of tech are you using to help keep people connected?
Yeah, definitely Slack. We use and we've used for the last 5, 6, 7 years or whatever, which has been great. And we have different channels for different people in Nashville, people in Charleston, our remote team, different communities that we can chat on and all that stuff. And and I think that's number one. And number two is every team member. Like our billable team members, our accountants that actually do client work. Let's say there's 40 to 45 of them. They are all on 8 to 10 to 12 to 15 clients, or even more, depending upon their staff level. And then each of those clients has client teams. So then there's within the function of just being at Accountfully physically at these offices or remotely. Then you're also within these 15 client teams that have their own Slack channel that then can discuss constantly about to-dos and questions client specific, as well as then you have your aspect of staff accountant level, senior accountant level, right? So there's a lot of different kind of levels in departments or divisions within Accountfully, and I think Slack's a great way that we do that, as well as we use Asana for our task and project management software. So everybody's fully engaged in there, and then we use Google Meet basically, or Google Hangouts for all of our, versus Zoom, just because it's integrated with our Gmail, for quick calls and things like that. So we leverage it in a good manner for all those things. And then outside of that, then you have the manager team and above meet, weekly on things and all that stuff, where the staff level typically doesn't. But we're trying to keep, people focused and do different trainings each month on, at the senior level, at the staff level, to get people kind of engaged in a bigger room that's not just, client focused every month. Or,
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. As far as like culture goes, and I know that's something that's been a big priority of yours really since beginning, because you didn't want to be sort of your typical suit and tie kind of cubicle hell accounting firm. My words, not yours, but something to that effect. Are there other, and I assume there are, what are the other companies that inspired you from a sort of culture point of building Accountfully different?
I would say that I think a lot of our inspiration for Accountfully is basically the anti-corporate world. I feel like I got out of like PwC, and I just hated it. Like, I mean, the people were great. Most of them were great, but I was like, the way that they just treat people and talent, they come in, you work 50 to 60 hours a week, and then half the people leave within 2 years to go to a different job and half to stay. And I'm like, this doesn't seem like it's a very fun venture. Like, you literally go there and you expect to be gone in a couple of years. Like, everybody does. Like, oh yeah, you're not on the partner track. You're going, and it's just like, it feels like it's a waste of money and time from just an employer standpoint, from a company standpoint. So like, I feel like that was a big inspiration in terms of, I really don't want to be like this. There's a ton of cool accountants that I work with or worked with that want a cool job, and then they just want to come to work. And does it really matter if you're dressed with a tie or a suit, or does it matter just how you present yourself verbally and in the work product you're doing? And that was a big part of it. And then over time, like, we kept getting involved at the start of Accountfully within more of the creative industry here in Charleston, which there's a lot of, like, marketing companies, video production companies, and different things like that, architects, and we're all kind of cool and hip and all that type of stuff. So we were trying to brand or connect ourselves with them, right? And when I came up with, or when we'd walk up with a pair of jeans and a nice button up and tennis shoes or whatever, or boots, and they're like, oh, you're an accountant? Wow, I didn't even picture you being an accountant. Right. You can talk, you're cool, you drink some beer with us, whatever. So that, I think the inspiration just kept going. Wow, there's something here. There's a market for the 25 to 40-year-old entrepreneur who runs a small business who requires the use of an accountant, whether it's a bookkeeper, whether it's a tax person. Somebody needs to do it, or whether they do it themselves or not. But there's the accounting clearly industry is stereotyped of stuffiness and don't respond to me when it's tax season and all this stuff that was like, wow, if you just like treat this person like a normal person and act like, kind of a respectful adult, they're kind of gonna and cool and on their vibe, they're gonna be like, wow, these are cool accountants. I want them to be my accountant.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like it was just kind of an easy sale process. As you went there, because we were just being ourselves, and then we're like, yeah, we'll go ahead and figure that out, or do that stuff for you. And that's what we've done as we've gone forward from a culture standpoint. We've continued to do that, which I think was a huge aspect of our growth, and our team members, love working here. And then like COVID hit, and it was just kind of like, the folks who stayed at home and were more stressed out about COVID versus other folks, like, there was a bad experience for people because they were like, well, this wasn't the same. And it's like, you've been stuck in your house for 9 months. Like everything in that life is different. It's not Accountfully's fault.
Right.
So, but a lot of employers got the brunt of that. And so, it sucked because we focused a lot of time and energy on our culture and, making sure our employees feel, that culture and that they enjoy. Accounting is not always fun. But that they enjoy, the people and can crack open a glass of wine or a beer like on a Thursday afternoon while they're working and just connect with their team members. Well, that kind of went away for a minute. So we had to kind of refocus on that, but I think everybody did. But yeah, that's kind of where we came from a culture standpoint.
And I like that you've decided having the sort of Tuesday through Thursday work week that, for those who are in the same office or you're, in the office, because I know of other companies that I've both consulted with and spoken for as well, who, tried things different ways at first, tried like letting people come in when they want and finding that just won't work. I don't think long-term, just because if certain people come in only on Tuesdays and others only come in on Mondays, they may never meet each other. You know what I mean? So I like the way you've gone with that. And the fact that you've treated it more like in a way, sort of like a boutique agency in a sense, and more of a creative sort of approach to it. And I think, I interviewed Ben Landers, who's the CEO of Blue Corona, on this podcast a while back. And Ben was talking about this moment when he was working for a large firm and he was like in the corporate tower and he was stepping into the elevator and a colleague he was stepping into the elevator. Somebody else was standing there with a coffee and like a colleague kind of grabbed him by the back of the suit jacket and yanked him back out of the elevator like, dude. And then the doors closed and he's like, you can't get in there with him. It was like one of the senior people and you weren't allowed to ride in the elevator with him. And I think those days are really on the way out finally, which is a good thing. All right, let me move to our lightning round. I want to be respectful of your time here. So complete this sentence. Nice guys and gals finish
first, long term.
I love it. What's a nice book you recommend to the nice makers?
Who Not How.
Who Not How.
Who Not How.
Oh, Who Not How. I don't.
Dave Sullivan.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, just about delegating versus trying to figure it out yourself.
Yes. Important information that every entrepreneur needs to know for sure. Yes. How is Brad nice to himself?
I'm kind of a perfectionist. I would say I'm nice to myself that gosh, that's a tough question.
It's okay. Take your time.
How am I nice to myself? I think I cut myself slack in terms of, and it kind of goes back to how do you unplug? I think weekends I try to stay unplugged and give myself free time and just allow myself to relax without thinking about work, because that's really the time I need to kind of re-inspire myself and just to refresh myself. Yeah. So I would say I'm nice to myself is really like on the weekends and stuff. And I try to just, have some personal time that's not just focused on business and stress, and just really allows me to defrag a bit.
That's awesome. And it's good that you're doing that. Do you, a side note here, do you communicate that to your team? Like, do they know? Like, I had a boss a million years ago, like BlackBerry days. I was just talking about this in another episode, and he had an auto reply on his email that said, "I'm not available from. I won't respond to your email from 9. I check my email twice a day, 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. And if you need me urgently, please call me." Are there ways that you set expectations that way, or let your team know that hey, Saturdays and Sundays, I'm not available, or anything like that?
Yeah, I think it's pretty well known, because the majority of our team basically doesn't do anything on the weekends or after hours typically.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice as we set that expectations with them of like, hey, this is not the traditional accounting firm, 40 hours a week. Also what we do is we do like all year long, we go like 2:00 Fridays. So as long as you get your time, your 40 in and your work done, you can leave at 2:00 every Friday. So like everybody typically is kind of off Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which is great.
Yeah.
So I think that's the expectation, and that really helps kind of talent understanding it. And I mean, employees have all the leverage right now. So the best you can do to keep them from working when they don't want to work, the better.
Yeah, good point. And I like the fact that you kind of turn that around to not, like, my question was, how do you communicate that you're not available? But the point is, and as you rightfully said, it's really the team knowing when not to connect, or when not to, bother the rest of the team. It's not just you. It's like, let everybody off for the weekend, please.
Exactly.
I love it. Okay. If you had a billboard, what would it say?
You are the CEO of your own life.
Nice. I like that. That's awesome. Brad, thank you so much for joining me today. How can folks get a hold of you or learn more or look for a job?
Yeah. Accountfully.com. Accountfully, our Instagram, our LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever. Go there. I think you'll, if you're looking for a job specifically in your accountant, go check out our Instagram. And we're not the same. We got great, cool branding, and we have some great kind of content, and we work with some of the coolest clients around. So I would say do that. And if you need to send an email, feel free to send an email to brad@accountfully.com, and I'll be in touch.
Awesome. Thanks again for joining me.
Awesome. It was great, Dave. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Nice Podcast. I would love to include your voice on this show. If you have comments or questions regarding this episode or any episode, whether you might have some nice communications tips of your own, visit friend.nicepodcast.co. There, you can record an audio comment, and I expect you'll hear it on an upcoming episode. Theme song is Little Jane May, and the end song is Funny Feeling by Alistair Crystal at alistaircrystal.ca, and we'll see you next time. Be nice.
You may know you are listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Izzy House hosts a great podcast called the Space Marketing Podcast. Izzy, tell us what these fine folks will get out of listening.
Space Marketing Podcast is where we explore marketing principles, strategies, and tactics through the lens of space. I talk space with some very interesting industry professionals about their challenges and successes with marketing in the new commercial space economy. This show is for business leadership, entrepreneurs, and the space curious.
Wow. And where in the universe can people subscribe?
All of the major channels, and you can also find it on MPN and spacemarketingpodcast.com.
You heard her. Go subscribe.